This is Kiersten Hathcock, and you are in the press row.
Welcome to the Press Row. From sports media to startups, retail to revolutionaries. The Press Row. Authentic conversations with game changers and visionaries. Now here's your host, Jonah Siegel.
Jonah here in the Press Row. Good morning. Happy to report I'm feeling better. I've been sick as a dog. I don't get sick often, but when I do, it kicks the you-know-what out of me. We are going on a tangent today. And I'll admit something that I probably shouldn't admit, and that is that I tape these introductions after I've done the show. So I know too much, but you're in for a ride today. I'm doing something I've really never done before. I'm talking to somebody who I've not talked to before. I talked to her literally for 15 seconds before we started taping. She was on Shark Tank. She's an author. She's got a great story to tell. And all I'm going to say is buckle up, sit back, and enjoy. I hope you get as much out of today's episode as I did, because it was really fantastic. Welcome back. Jonah Siegel here in Seattle, arisen from the bug. Everybody is sick. And my son said to me, actually, "Oh my God, you're never sick." I'm like, "Yes, but when I get sick, man, do I get it." And it has kicked my butt. So it is good to be vertical. I actually have some energy today. I slept last night through the night. Happy to report. Say two things before we get started. One, I've never really done quite what we're about to do, and that is that the person sitting on the screen across from me, I've only spoken to once, and that was like 15 seconds ago. Usually there's some degree of rapport, so we've just met. We've talked back and forth on social media, but this is really the first time we've seen each other, the first time we've talked, so this is new. Second, I just want to give a bit of a fair warning to those who are listening, because some of you listen in your car, and there's sometimes younger ears listening, that some of the subject matter might be challenging for younger ears to listen to. We're not going to get graphic, but some of her subject matter is more mature, if you will, than you may want little ones to hear. So I am just giving you a bit of a fair warning. We're not talking about sexual activities or graphic words or anything like that, but it is a bit of a difficult topic. Don't tune out. It's not depressing, but I just wanted to give that fair warning to those who sometimes put this on in the car as opposed to in the earbuds while running on the treadmill or something. So, having said that, I'd like to introduce you to Kiersten Hathcock. She's got one of the most unique backgrounds of anyone I've ever met, let alone put on the podcast. What initially drew her to me, not surprisingly, early, often entrepreneur, and uber successful. If you're watching, the face may be recognizable from one of my favorite TV shows, Shark Tank, we'll talk about. But she then turned into, I believe, a New York Times best-selling author. Am I wrong on that?
I would love to claim that, but
okay, so
no.
I'm wrong on that. But she's penned a book that's very important on a topic that we'll delve into called Little Voices. She's doing very important work in and around interesting topics. I've rambled for too much, especially given my health. Kiersten, how are you?
Oh, thank you, Jonah. That was a great intro, and I will take New York Times bestseller all day long, even though it's not authentic.
Well, I'll just say that,
down the road it will be. Yes.
If you Google first of all, you don't have a Wikipedia page, so doing research was a little bit more challenging. Thank you.
Yes, sorry about that.
No, it's good. But more importantly, there's just a ton about your book out there on everything. So I assumed that you had been given that honor. So, you started off as a mom entrepreneur. Well, that's not how you started off, but
right.
You had this. I'll answer for you, and then I'll let you tell the story. You started by designing kids' furniture that wasn't crap.
Yeah. That's a great way to describe it. I wish I would have used that in my marketing taglines. But I did, I actually, to kind of go back further even, I grew up in Ohio. My parents are teachers. My dad was a football coach.
Time out.
Uh-huh.
Shout out to the Ohio State University.
Shout out. Oh, the
National
Buckeyes.
Championships. The
Huge.
Buckeyes. My daughter is a student there.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
It was
that's
a
why
big-
you've been in Ohio.
It
Got
was
it.
a
Okay.
big night, Monday night. We were very happy. Sorry, go on.
Oh, us too. We were jumping up and down. It's pretty awesome. So that's where I grew up. My dad, we didn't have a lot of money, so my dad built a lot of our furniture, and he would build it out of like bleacher boards, that were being taken down at the high school. So I just want to tell you, I grew up in a world where I wasn't scared of carpentry. I never did any of that growing up at all. I was busy running track and, doing all the things you do in high school. But it sure came in handy, because then cut to, I'm 36 years old. I'm living in LA. I had been with A&E and the History Channel for several years prior when we lived in Chicago. My background is in training and ed and marketing. And we had 2 little kids. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to put them. We had just moved from the East Coast to the West Coast for my husband's job. And I thought, I just don't want to put them back in daycare again. I don't want to do this. I got to figure something out. So it was in that process. I ended up nannying. I did all the things that I could do, contract work. And I thought, we need a toy box. I bet I could build this. Like, I bet if I could teach myself to build this isn't going to be that hard unless I lose a finger or two, then it's going to be difficult. So I ended up starting to build furniture. And I really like that mid-century modern style. A lot of people in Los Angeles have that style. And that was when the light bulb went off. And I looked on the market, and there was only one toy box that was mid-century modern style, that looked handcrafted, that, wasn't crap, as you say. And it was $500. I'm like, there's no way I can afford that. Can't do it. So I went to the lumberyard, packed the kids in the minivan, bought a couple sheets of plywood, and literally the first one I built, I used a circular saw. I did not use a table saw, so the edges are a little wonky. But I thought, you know what? I think if I'm looking for something like this, surely there are other people looking for this. So cut to, I put it on Etsy. Etsy was fairly new. This was in 2006, 2007 when I started Mod Mom Furniture. And all of a sudden, I just started getting all this traction, and all of these people started writing about this mom in a garage in Burbank, California, building furniture. And I was able to start selling them. So I would basically build them in my garage, take them to UPS. They would package them up and ship them out. Well, it got to the point, it was pretty amazing. I think it was kismet, it was timing, it was, I feel my intuition was very much on fire and tapping into what was right at that moment. So that was really the impetus for that. Plus I had a need for it. But I ended up being able to grow the company internationally out of my garage, even before I went on Shark Tank. So by the time I was on Shark Tank, which was in 2011, I had built close to 400 pieces in my garage, designed and built these mid-century modern style kits.
By yourself.
By yourself. And I do still have all my fingers, which is really a good thing. I did have a biscuit joiner incident where I almost took part of my finger off, but I'm good now. So
now, how big, like Shark Tank is huge now.
Yes, it's huge.
Outside of sports, it's one of the top rated TV shows.
Yeah.
How big was it in 11 when you were on?
Not big, because it was the second season. So
okay.
I only had the first season to look back on. And it wasn't even my idea. It was my dad, my football coach dad, called me from Ohio and said, Kiersten, there's this new show. You got to sign up. They're literally filming in Burbank. Like they're in LA. You're in LA. It seems like a no-brainer. You're a mom in a garage. And my first reaction was, hell no, I'm not. I'm not doing that. This is terrifying. Why would I want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then I sat on it for a minute. And then, to quote intuition again, I had that overwhelming kind of calm feeling. And I thought, you know what? I should do this. I need to try it at least. So I put my application in.
And how long after the application went in did you hear back?
I heard back pretty quickly, honestly. I think it was within a week. And I had a call with a producer on the phone. And then after that, they said, okay, we want you to film a video of you in the garage talking about your work. And and that was, that was what was so cool. 1 second. Oh, sorry about that. That was what was so cool about it, that, it was so organic. Like I wasn't really looking for anything. I kind of thought, well, this would be a great opportunity to meet an investor, because I was at the point where I was looking into Amish manufacturing in order to be able to scale the company. And it just seemed really, really kismet. And they basically said, okay, yeah, this is great. And that video, by the way, is online. It's on YouTube and on my website.
The original. The one you submitted?
Mhm.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, if you want to see it, I'll
Mr.
shoot.
Producer, can you make sure that we include that on the YouTube page and on the podcast page? Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's great.
I like talking to Mr. Producer while we're going along.
I like that. That's fantastic. So so basically I got on the show. That was such a great experience, and also a terrifying experience. And I learned a lot about myself, to be honest with you, during
Okay,
that.
well, hang on. You jumped way too far ahead. We got to get into the details.
Okay.
So you got to the show.
Mm-hmm.
Was Mark Cuban on the show that year or not yet?
No, he wasn't. I think he came on the next year. So
Okay,
it was Kevin Harrington was the shark that then dropped off. The rest of them were the same as the folks you see now.
And based on what we see today, how different was it? Or was it identical?
You know, it's a lot more polished now. I will say that, you know, what I went in and talked about, I was in the tank for an hour. But what I went in and talked about, right? So it was that part was very authentic and very fluid. What was interesting about it is, you know, they pair you with a producer from the very beginning. The producer is trying to make it good TV, obviously, right? I'm not understanding that necessarily. So they asked me to write my 2-minute pitch. I'm writing it. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really, you know, this seems like it's going to be effective. And he comes back and he says, hey, why don't we change this and change that and change this? And they change it to the point where it's unrecognizable.
Right.
A day before or 2 days before we were filming, we had a run through, which you probably heard other people talk about. And it's in front of it's on, you know, Sony Pictures lot. It's in front of everybody, except for the actual sharks. So the legal team, all those guys. And I get up. Now I practiced it for a month, like over and over and over again. I was sick of it. I get up and I start to pitch. And I completely bombed. I couldn't remember a thing. I kind of got tears in my eyes. And I said, oh my God, this just doesn't even feel right. Right. So the executive producer comes over with the other producers and they say, Kiersten, it's okay. We love you. Just keep trying, like, go home and practice again. It's okay. Please know, you know, we're not kicking you off the show or anything like that. And I said, you guys, it doesn't feel authentic to me. None of it does. Yeah. I can't say these things because it's not me.
Right.
And so I said, I'm going to go home and rewrite it. Now, mind you, I'd been practicing for a month, right? So I had 2 days. So I went to our daughter's like cheerleading event. She was in elementary school, and I sat on the bleachers and I got out an old receipt that I had in my purse, and I just started writing. If someone had told me 10 years ago I'd have an internationally known furniture company, I would have said they were crazy. And so that was the pitch I started. I started to write it just from my heart. Like what I knew I could say. And that's ultimately what ended up giving me 2 offers. But they fought tooth and nail for me to not revise my pitch. So I stuck to my guns, and I'm so glad that I did. You know, I stuck to what my intuition was telling me.
All right. So which 2 sharks made you offers?
So Kevin O'Leary and Robert Herjavec both offered. And it was pretty much right away.
What was your ask?
I was asking, that's so funny. It's been a long time since anybody has asked me that. At the time when I went in, I was actually asking for $400,000 because just start a furniture company in the US, you actually need millions. Yeah. And so that was what my ask was.
And they giving up how much equity?
I think it was 20%, I think is what I was giving, but I couldn't ask for 400,000 because during that second season, they limited everyone. All you could ask for was something under 100. So they said, why don't you come in asking for 90,000 in exchange for 20% equity? Okay. And so, I was like, well, okay, here's my shot. You know, I recognize that. I'm not going to fight them on that. So that's what I went in with. And
did you accept one of the offers?
I accepted Herjavec's offer. It was a better offer on all fronts. And I was so excited. I went home. I was technically not allowed to tell even my family or anyone else, right? But of course, I told my husband and my kids, and we all jumped around and had a nice dinner. And, you know, it was pretty awesome. And then I waited and I waited and I waited. And about a month later, I was like, well, everyone else who won a deal and that was in my group, they're all hearing from their sharks. I don't know why I'm not hearing. I wait 3 months and I finally got the executive producer involved. And I said, Clay, I don't know why this is happening. I don't get this. And he said, well, let me get a hold of him. So I was out on a walk one day in Burbank And I get a call from Robert Hershevek, and he said, "Hey, Kiersten, hey, it's Robert. Listen, can you tell me again what our deal was and what your company name is?"
God.
Yeah. So of course, immediately, Jonah, I was crushed, and I had that huge kick in the gut feeling, and I was like, "This is going nowhere." So I said, "Oh, absolutely," and here's all the information again, and I gave him the same information I gave in the tank. And he said, "All right, well, I'm going to come, let me get back to you. Let me get back to you and review all of this stuff." So a couple of weeks later, this was prior to the episode airing in April of 2011. April Fool's Day, actually.
My birthday.
Is it really? Oh my gosh. He said, "You know what?" He called me back, and he's 2 weeks later, and he said, "I think you're still a little bit too small. Why don't you come back in like a year?" Yeah. So again, the kick in the gut feeling. I literally went out. I think I bought like a 6-pack of Corona. I sat in my kitchen floor. Right. That's it. It wasn't tequila at that time.
More like a 6-pack of Tito's or Don Julio.
I know. I'm up to harder stuff now. But I sat on the floor and I cried, and then I called my husband, and I called everyone, and said, "Guess what? This is going to air in April, and it's going to look like I got a deal," and it didn't. And so then there was a lot to consider there. I was put on talk shows. I had to very carefully talk about this without slamming anyone. But, my feeling is ultimately, I'm really glad I did the show. I mean, I got so much out of it. It airs everywhere around the world. It was such a great experience. Would I have handled it that way if I were in his position? No. And would I want an angel investor that way? No,
never heard from him again.
No. But here's the beautiful part about this. So I was
never heard from the show again. You've never heard from the show again?
I keep in touch with Clay, the executive producer. He's a really nice guy. And he and I have talked back and forth about other projects and things, and he's great. And everyone was really supportive. I have never heard from Hershevek again. However, what was so cool is because it does air all over the place, and they had just gotten it put on Hulu at the time. So a year later, I get an email from a true angel investor. Like, this guy is heart of gold, San Francisco. And he said, "Kiersten, I just watched your episode. You are not a normal mom in a garage," basically. "Do you," like in a good way. He said, "I believe in you. I want to help you however I can. Did your deal go through?" I said, "No, it didn't." He said, send me some proposals, because this isn't going to make me or break me. I want to help." So I literally walked away with more money. He ended up giving $130,000. I gave away less equity. So I got the best of both worlds.
When the show aired, did you do a ton of sales?
No, because my product is a $400 toy box. So it's not like it's a $10 thing that it's not an impulse buy. It's a very niche. I did some. Yeah, there was definitely an uptick. From a sales and marketing perspective, from a PR perspective, it was great. I ended up, being able to, quadruple sales and all of that. But a lot of that was already in the works. Like, prior to going on Shark Tank, I was getting celebrity orders. I was getting requests from 17 different countries, retailers from those countries. So I just kept moving. I just kept doing everything I could do to move the needle and continue to grow. But it didn't blow up because of Shark Tank by any means.
So I've heard from numerous people that the deal didn't get done. I've never heard that they got ghosted.
Yeah, I'm the ghosted one. That's a good way to say that. Yeah, so I was ghosted. But honestly, I don't think I would have scripted it any differently, because my angel investor is not only a friend, he's just such a good guy. He's such a good guy.
I'm stunned. I don't want to spend any more time on it, but when you look at the show, if you were going to describe Robert, he's the nice guy.
I know, which is also, it factored in. I mean, he definitely was, his offer was better than Kevin O'Leary.
But forget that just for a second. Like, each of them has DNA that they emit.
Exactly.
He emits the nice guy.
He does. And that factored into my decision too. And it actually made it even better that his deal was the better deal. I didn't have to do anything with royalties and that type of thing with his deal. So listen, the fact that a deal doesn't get done happens. Right. That's business.
That I understand. And I've come to learn that it happens more frequently than not on the show.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The fact that he completely ghosted you, to me, is inexcusable.
Yeah. I mean, know, to his credit, he did say come back in a year. And to my credit, I said, why would I have I would never do business or get in bed with anybody that is like this, that does business like this. You
No,
know?
exactly.
So I knew right then and there.
So what ended up happening with the furniture company?
So I ended up growing it slowly. And I actually ran it for 17 years.
Good for you.
And I ran it for 17 years. And as I'm
Profitably?
running it, profitably. As I'm running it all of that time, I'm also, a lot of other things are starting to happen in my life. There's a lot of, you know, personal stuff that was happening, and things that I know we're going to talk about. Yeah. And in 2023, I definitely had that moment of, okay, I think it served its purpose in my life. It's done really good things, and I'm done. I need to move on to these other things that I feel more passionate about. So I ended up closing it in 2023 in December.
Closing it or selling it?
Oh, I closed it. Yeah, I closed it. So what ended up happening, it was profitable until my manufacturer stopped paying me my licensing fees. So it absolutely, you know, it was that moment where
what were your sales at the peak? What were your highest sales? Roughly.
Highest sales, 300,000 at the peak.
In a year?
Yeah.
Good for you.
You know, and it would ebb and flow, especially depending on what was happening. But it was interesting because the designs, I mean, most of the designs, like I would put new stuff out, but not a lot of new stuff. They were very consistent since 2007, but it was also, you know, crafted with that mid-century modern design. It was for a very niche market, very, you know, so it lasted the test of time, I think, because of that.
Okay. Let's change lanes.
Sure.
Get off the on-ramp and talk about the other stuff.
Okay, sure.
So furniture stuff is going on.
Yes.
And something happens to you. What happens?
Yes. So while I was building the furniture, actually, this was all kind of starting during Shark Tank time period. I was in the garage, and again, to back up, I grew up in Ohio. I am not religious necessarily. I didn't grow up going to church every Sunday, but my family's background is Baptist because both sides of my family are from the South, so that's how that was. But I always kind of believed in there was something more that we're all connected, but I didn't have any preconceived notions about what all of that really truly looks like. Cut to in the garage, I am building furniture, and nails start moving across the workbench on their own. I start hearing voices of children, right? So naturally, I'm thinking this has got to be the polyurethane I've been breathing for the last 3 years. Like, I am losing my mind. So I kept it really quiet. I didn't say a word for a while. And then it got to be where it was so overwhelming that I would literally hear, "Mom." And I would run in from the garage because I'm like, oh, one of my kids is calling for me, and then realized, no, wait, they're at school. I just dropped. Wait, who was saying mom? Like, I don't get this, right? So I'm very scientific. I love science. I love data. I love empirical research. So I'm looking for everything outside of what, I would, or what was natural for me to look at. Couldn't make sense of it. It ramped up.
They weren't saying red rum, right?
They were not saying red rum, thank God.
Okay,
but
thank you.
I was noticing that they were predominantly children, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. Like, the voices were kids, things moving around on their own, TV coming on and off, kids' laughter when no one was home. And I thought, well, that's weird because I have a kids' furniture company, and interesting. So anyways, I finally said to my husband, I think I'm losing my mind. You might need to check me in someplace because this is happening. I don't know what to do about it. And he said, I don't think you're losing your mind, Kiersten. I think, first of all, I believe in you, and I don't think this is crazy. And I said, thank God. Okay, thank you. So, but I can remember, he's also highly intuitive, not necessarily in the ways that I am, but I can remember laying in bed with him one night, and he said, hey, do you see that girl in the corner? She's got long dark hair. She's standing in the corner of our room. And I said, yeah, I talked to her earlier today. So that was the start of it. That was like 2009-ish. I basically went into like full-blown mediumship mode, which I didn't have any background in mediumship. I didn't know that was even possible. And I certainly didn't know why.
Okay, so let's pause just because I occasionally host live chats in social media.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm a recent discovery of this whole medium thing.
Okay, yes.
I didn't know about it.
Okay,
So
all right.
I like to make sure that the audience, both of them, understand what you're talking about. So what is
Yes.
mediumship?
So mediumship, people would say psychic, psychic medium. Typically, I stay away from that word because it has such a negative connotation. Mediumship is really the ability to connect with energy, or those, some people would say those are on the other side, those are in heaven, depending on, your background and your vernacular. So it's just being able to access information that is outside of what we normally think reality is.
Is it
That's
fair to
mediumship.
say that a medium professes to be able to communicate with the deceased?
Yes, that's a good description. Yes, that is.
Okay.
So I really didn't want to have any part of becoming public with this.
I can't imagine why. I really don't know why.
It's like there's
You didn't
no
want to go
why.
on Shark Tank for that?
No, right? Oh my gosh, yeah, I have a story about that too. It was quite funny. But I just was like, I don't know what to do with this. What I started noticing though is once I started to trust it, like I remember getting a message from a child who had died, and the only reason that he popped in and that he even came to me is because I was reading Facebook, and a friend of mine from high school who was not a super good friend, they were just kids I went to high school with, they were posting about the memorial of their son Nate, and so I'm reading it and I'm like, oh my God, first of all, I didn't know they got married. Second of all, I didn't know they lost a child. This is horrific. He was 13 when he died. And then all of a sudden he's standing next to me. Not only can I hear him, but I can see him. And I was like, whoa, okay, now I'm really scared and I don't know what to do. So I sat on it, but he kept saying, please, can you please share some things with my parents? Please, please, please. And I thought, okay, if this is real, I'm going to write it all down. So I did. He told me a bunch of things that I couldn't have known, and I wrote them all down. And then I sat on it for a couple of days. And then I just had this I was in the garage again, right? And I had this overwhelming feeling.
Are there
like,
cornfields nearby just by any chance where they play baseball?
No, but I like that. I like that visual. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I feel like I need to reach out to his mom. So I wrote to her, and now I was terrified, first of all, of hurting them. Like, I do not want to bring any more pain to a couple who has lost their child. My parents still live in Defiance, Ohio, where I am from. That's where this family lives. And I don't want to bring any shame to my family or any of that. But I thought, I need to do this. So I wrote to her, Denise.
Like literally, like handwritten note?
And Facebook. Thank God. Facebook
okay.
facilitated this. So I sent her a private message. I said, I don't know if you remember me or not. You graduated 2 years, before me. My dad and my mom still live in town. My dad was a football coach. I don't know. I don't even remember exactly what I said, but I tried to be very gentle with it. And she immediately wrote back and said, oh my gosh, Kiersten, thank you so much. And that kind of gave me that freedom to go, okay, I can breathe. And we started communicating back and forth. I got on a phone call with them. It was like, we're still really, really, really tight today. Nate comes in and gives me messages to pass to his parents. But basically they were saying, there's no way you could have known any of this. This is stuff that no one knows. And that's what ultimately led me to believe, you know what, I think this is real. I don't know how it's happening. I have no, I don't get this necessarily, but there's a purpose in it. And if it's helping them, then I'm going to do it. So that started it. And then I started to notice other kids started to come in, and many of them had been abused by predators or killed by pedophiles. And I thought, okay, what is that? Like, I don't understand. I'm happy to help them. I do not know why this is. I started to make connections with cops around the country, cops that I was led to because I knew that they would have received, the information. Okay. Excuse me. And basically I ended up unknowingly kind of falling into working on cold cases that involved missing children. And so through that work, I know it's crazy, right? I thought, okay, if they need my help, I get it. I don't know why they're all coming to me and why they've all been sexually abused. So it wasn't until I was 40. So all of that started at 36. I was 40 years old. I start having my own flashbacks of abuse I endured as a child. And it started to finally make sense. I was getting the same visions, kind of like I would have when a child would come in and give me a message, but it was me as a little kid. And it would be like a flash in a tent. it would be like I was finally able to put it all together that it was my uncle, very distant uncle, who sexually abused and raped me between the ages of 3 and 6. So not only were these kids, here I'm thinking they're coming to, to me to get help on their cases, but they were also coming to help me understand that I was in their club. I survived, but I was in their club. So that full circle moment was pretty insane to come to that realization.
And until then, as an adult, you had no recollection, no memory.
No, and that's what's so interesting. Repressed memories, it's such a controversial topic. And there are a lot of people out there saying, if you go to a therapist and you have, the therapist is saying, well, you sure you don't remember something from your past? Like that kind of thing. I had none of that. I was not seeing a therapist. I was just truly just trusting what I was finally knowing and understanding was my intuition. And those memories were starting to come back. And it's pretty common to have memories come back around the age of 40, apparently, as I've done a lot of research on this now. And so that I feel was the connection and one of the reasons why. And it's also, to be honest with you, one of the reasons why I'm a fairly tuned in medium. Because when you endure something like that, you easily can compartmentalize in your brain. And so for me, it's not like I'm talking to you right now, but if spirit, and they're not right now, but if there was a spirit in the room, right? We're not in the garage, right? If someone was trying to get a message across to you right now, I could be having a conversation with you and still be receiving the information at the same time. And I think that that's kind of what happens when you are abused as a tiny child. You have no other choice but to, your brain protects you and you move out of the way, basically.
So at 40 years old, you have a epiphany that you endured something horrific.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do with that?
Right. Well, I mean, it's that was my question too. So I went to therapy, I did hypnotherapy, I did all of these things to, really try and heal little Kiersten. And that was a very difficult road. It led to a lot of bad stuff and some good stuff happening in my life. But I think, we like to think as adults that if we go and we talk about it, that we fixed it, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm a doer. So like, I give me something to do and, there's a solution, then I'm doing it. But what I didn't understand was that the subconscious houses and actually houses all of that pain. And it's also where my connection to the other side is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, 80% of our behavior is driven by our subconscious. So unless you do things to help heal little Kiersten and help heal that where that subconscious wounding is, you're going to continue to recreate the same type of patterns and you're going to attract the same type of people. So even like the wolf in sheep's clothing, it was really kind of a lesson for me from Shark Tank. I believed the persona of Robert Herjavec. I'm not saying he's a horrible guy, but I would hook, line, and sinker believing that, he is who he says he's going to be, and he is going to do what he said he was going to do. And that's how I looked at life, at everyone. I would always give them the benefit of the doubt. And I find as a sexual abuse survivor, you either kind of go one way or the other. You're wide open and you're smiley and you're making sure everybody's okay and you're people pleasing and you don't have boundaries, which I didn't. So I learned a lot through that process of healing little Kiersten, and I created a lot more boundaries and I have a lot more discernment. So I feel, I feel really good about that piece. I feel like I've grown a lot as a human.
Now you've mentioned your dad.
Yes.
You wrote a book, so he obviously knows what happened.
Yes, he does. My parents are like the best parents in the world. I absolutely adore them. They are such amazing human beings. And it was so difficult for them to process this because, unfortunately, everyone seems to think that kids are getting abused by strangers. And in some cases, yes, that's the case. But the majority of kids who are sexually abused are abused by someone close to them.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't see this uncle very often, but every time I would see him from the ages of 3 to 6, he would do something leading to a rape at 5. So, that was really difficult for my parents. I give them so much credit because they just cried and hugged me and said, I am so sorry. And I know as a parent myself, we have 2 kids. 26 and 22, that if one of them came to me and said that, I would just be devastated. Like, how did I not see this? How did I not protect them? You know? So part of the work that I do and, you know, with other law enforcement and with the nonprofit that I co-founded with retired NYPD detective Mark Pucci, it gives me a chance to also be that person that others couldn't be for me as a kid.
So is said uncle still with us? Was he ever around? Was he ever confronted any of that?
So I wrote him a letter, and this is interesting from the standpoint of what I talked about with the subconscious earlier. He is still living, from what I understand. He lives in the south part of the country. Okay. And I finally, it was like 3 years after I came to all of these revelations, I also was in contact with someone else who had been abused by him too. So I was getting validation from everywhere. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to write him. And so I wrote him a letter and I just said, I don't forgive you, to be honest with you. I don't know if I ever will. But I want you to know you didn't break me, because that's really, that was the main thing. I needed to confront him that way. Mm-hmm. I also know quite a bit about analytics, and I was writing a blog at the time on my website, and I could tell that someone from his hometown was reading my blog. So I could see that he was getting him from, he never ever responded to it. Of course he wouldn't. I'm one of multiple children that he did this to. There's a lot of stuff that came out about him within the family. And unfortunately, with a lot of this sexual abuse that happens, it's generational. And, there is a piece of me that I feel horrible for him, because guess what? This happened to him when he was a kid. And so he basically, his family groomed him, all the boys, to abuse the girls. So from a very, very young age, backwoods Southern family, that's how they operated. Mm-hmm. So, until we can change and stop and talk about, this is why I'm so vocal about this. Like, it's not my favorite thing to talk about by any means. And it's controversial to talk about childhood sexual abuse, but I am doing it because unless we talk about it, we're not going to be able to stop the cycles.
So you write this book.
I write this book. Yes.
It's your story called Little Voices.
Yes. So I write this book.
Go ahead.
So that came later. I actually got an agent in 2019. Thankfully, part of that was because of Shark Tank, which is again why I thank Shark Tank. That whole experience led to so many good things. And then my book sold in 2021, and it came out in 2022. So I wrote this book. I basically chronicled my journey into understanding my intuition and these kids coming in, and also these kids helping me through life, and then how I worked with these cops on these cases and whatnot. So it kind of I tried to be really transparent about it as someone who didn't believe in intuition before and didn't believe in any of this stuff. Like, we all have these gifts. It's if we choose to grow them, because they're kind of like a muscle, if we choose to honor them, most of the time we choose to ignore them. So that was the purpose.
So you write the book gets released. You're all over the press.
Yeah, I was really lucky in that, and I say lucky, I don't know, the kids on the other side have, kind of guided me this whole time. In fact, I have an interesting story about that. Before, I went through 44 rejections of my book before I landed a publishing deal with Post Hill Press. And I'm going to show you just so you can see. So I kept getting the message that the publishing house would have a tree in the logo.
Okay.
This was the last publishing house that my agent pitched. I didn't even look at them because they were the last on the list. Like, we were going chunk by chunk. So she was like, here's the top tier. We're going to all the big guys. And we get down to Post Hill Press, and it was distributed through Simon & Schuster. So it's, they're a great publishing house. But, and finally she goes, okay, Kiersten, we're on the last one. I don't know who else to pitch. I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, but I believe in you. And I was like, okay, well, let me look at them. Oh my God, it's a tree. I've been hearing this. I looked at every other tree logo in the publishing world except for them. So the minute I saw that, I went, of course, it's going to be the last one. Like, I feel like my lot in life, and maybe some of the stuff that I came here to experience, is to be an underdog. It's that person that I just keep going. You know, I just keep going. Like with Shark Tank, I'm doing things in worlds that I was not accepted in as a female carpenter. That you know, just the book publishing deal was also an example. You just, you know, if things are meant to be, they will happen. But you also have to stick with it and keep going. And
so what are you doing now? Like what keeps you busy now?
Right now it's been awesome. My husband and I actually work together, and we love each other, so we don't, you know, we can make this work, which is great. But we've been working together for the last 5 years. We work, he's the CEO of a nonprofit here in Arizona. We help entrepreneurs. We work I work as a mentor. I also work in marketing, so I head up a lot of the marketing for that company. And then on the other side of what I'm doing, a couple things are happening. I'm still working with National Institute for Law and Justice, which is a nonprofit that I co-founded with the cop. And we're working on cases all over the country, cases that involve murders that were deemed suicide, cases that involve trafficking. We do a lot of work on the Onondaga Nation. So that's been really amazing to be able to help, you know, because the indigenous community does not get the support that they need. And a lot of these cases just fall by the wayside. So I'm working on those as a medium. And also there's a TV series. It's in very, very early production stage. I have 2 amazing producers from LA who read the book and said, we've got to make this into a TV series. So we're in the process of getting the lead writer on board and then all the other people on board. So, you know, that process is long, but it's good. So
I'm curious, you know, what was the name of the movie about the little kid who said that he saw his grandparents?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh.
And then he admitted that he lied. Doesn't matter. But
wait,
you know
it's not the one with Haley Joel Osment, is it?
Yeah,
with Bruce Willis?
Yeah. No. That's
because that was real. I remember he didn't lie at the end. Yeah. Okay.
That wasn't real. That's a movie. That's
you know,
that's a complete work of fiction.
Not real, but I mean the storyline in the end was he was actually seeing spirit. I don't know about the one who lied. That's interesting.
There's a it was a book and a movie.
Wow.
About a kid, I think either in the Midwest or in the South, who claimed to speak to I think his dead grandparents.
Okay, yeah.
And in the end, he was everywhere. The kid was everywhere. Yeah.
Wow.
And he then later admitted that he lied.
Oh my God. Yeah, no. That's not the case with this. I will tell you. And
my question was, how much does those things like that hurt?
Oh, a lot. I mean, that's, you know, it's maddening, to be honest with you, because as someone who was so science minded and didn't believe in any of this, and to then say, hey, actually, no, this is real, and we can all develop our intuition. Like, we all have these abilities. It's maddening to see, like any other profession, when you have bad eggs and you have people doing things for the wrong reasons. I'm not a professional medium in the sense I don't do readings. You know, I'm not. Everything I do is volunteer. It's just volunteer. So none of this, and it's not to say that I think that mediums shouldn't charge. I absolutely think they should. But in my case, I just knew that wasn't my path. And it's really difficult to see when mediums and psychics are out there doing things that are not, you know, they're not above board. And I hate that. It really does hurt.
Oh, that's not it. Oh yeah, maybe this is it.
You know what it
was? You know what it was? I think it was called Breakthrough.
Okay.
And I'm mistaken.
Okay.
The story was he fell through the ice. The kid fell through the ice.
Oh.
And he claimed that he died and he saw the other side and he spoke to the dead while he was gone. Okay. And he came back and he started telling his parents things that there's no way he could have known.
Right. Okay.
And then he later came through and said that he lied.
Wow.
St. Louis teenager slipped through an ice and went underwater for 15 minutes before being resuscitated. He remains in a coma. Yeah, that's the story. And it's based, I think it's based on a true story.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, you know, it's hard. I think that, you know, the only thing that I've really wanted to try and do, aside from help abuse survivors and whatnot. It's to sort of normalize intuition some, and those types of stories do not help. That's for sure. In my case, you know, the way that I channel is so different. When I met Mark Pucci, NYPD detective, it was because I volunteered to work on a missing persons case, and we had friends in common, and he had volunteered too because he was retired at the time. And basically, long story short, one day he was going out to, and this was actually a organized crime related case. And one day I started getting all these images. I was getting specific images, specific things I needed to tell him. And so I called him. I didn't know him very well at the time, but I said, Mark, I don't know what you're doing today, but you're in danger. And I just, please, you know, this is going to sound nuts, but please just keep this in the back of your head. These are the things that I'm being shown for you. He said, Kiersten, because he was very quiet about what he was doing. And he said, I'm actually going out to the space, the area where you believe the remains are. And so he gets out to where the remains are in this case. And sure enough, this gentleman confronts him. And he has the same symbol that I was seeing on his arm.
Right.
He, you know, all of those things started to make sense. And Mark said he wouldn't have been alerted to posture, you know, because he's not, you know, he carries a gun and everything, but he literally had to. He said, I think the guy was reaching down and he took the gun and was going to come out and shoot. And he said it would have been a gunfight. And because Mark immediately went, oh, that's exactly what Kiersten told me, he was able to posture first, pull his gun and say, you know, get the F out of here, and went all like New York cop on him. So, you know, that type of thing happens. I was in Flagstaff at the time when it happened, and he was in New York. I don't know how to explain that, you know.
But how many, I'm making air quotes, friends want you to, you know, be the magician at the party, you know, and do parlor tricks?
Thank God that ended a long time ago, because I was very open about it. And I said, listen, I'm not, that's not how I'm wired.
But people think it, right? Like, oh, if you can do this, who are you seeing now? Who are you talking to now? Right.
Yeah. And it will happen, you know, there'll be occasions where I know, sometimes I don't share it right away. Sometimes I will share it later. I have to use that. That's where discernment comes in. You know, like I was back home visiting my parents, and my dad and I were in the press box of this my dad's high school, and I'm meeting the superintendent, and all of a sudden there's a woman that shows up next to me and is trying to give me information. I did not know that his sister-in-law had just passed from cancer and was giving information, you know, and at the time, and I thought, this is not the time and place to share this. So later on, I said to my dad, who is very much a believer now, because of what he's lived through with me. Mm-hmm. And I said, Dad, I just got to tell you, this information came through, and, you know, if you feel like you want to share it with him, go for it. I just don't know quite how to handle this. So he saw him at another meeting, and he said, hey, I wanted to tell you that our, you know, Kiersten, blah, 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 medium, her book, blah, blah. And this is what she got. And they were so grateful, because it made so much sense, and it gave them so much comfort, the message that was passed. And I thought, okay, good. That's how it was supposed to happen, you know? So it's really, it's tricky. It is tricky to have heightened intuition and know when to say something, when not to say something. But yeah, I'm not a parlor trick girl, so.
How distracting is it though? Because based on what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing correctly, you and I are having this conversation.
Right.
And all of a sudden, behind me or next to you pops up, for lack of a better word, a ghost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And starts talking to you.
It's distracting. In the very beginning, this is where I had to learn boundaries. Like, I had to learn boundaries with regular people, right? Then I also had to learn boundaries with this other world. And so when I first started, I was just wide open. And I didn't set any intention. So now I set the intention that, you know, anyone who is on the other side that is meant to come to me, that is for my highest good, as they say, right, is allowed in. And so that created a lot of boundary and a lot of, but there are times where I'd be like, no, I've got to get this other chapter written in my book, or you know, I've got marketing stuff to do. So that's what I'm going to focus on. But if they need to come through and they're meant to come through, they will find ways. They will just pop in while I'm watching television, you know, like things like that.
I've multiple times in the last 6 months
Hmm.
been asked by fellow medium,
Okay.
is that the
Okay.
right
Yeah.
terminology?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
If I wanted a reading.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And my response has always been no. And
Yeah.
it's not to be rude.
Yeah.
It's
Mm-mm.
just, I've always just said, well, I've lost people close to me.
Right.
I'm not really yearning
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
converse. Like, I'm not looking
Right.
to
Right.
them for guidance or to hear from them per
Right.
se. So I don't think that which you're going to deliver is meaningful.
Right. That's a great answer. Yeah. Yeah.
Many of them were very put off by that.
Really? Mm.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't.
And I think they just took it as you're not a believer. I said, look, like, it's not that I'm not a believer or not. It's just what you're selling
Right.
doesn't interest me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. To be honest with you, I mean, yeah, there are times when some of my fellow mediums that I'm friends with, will say, "Hey," and I'll say, "No, actually, I don't. I don't. Like, I'm good." I don't know. I mean, I guess I have the ability to connect too, but I don't know. I don't think I need that information all the time.
I was hosting a chat and a medium wanted to do a reading on me. And I said, again, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So somebody
Yeah.
else said, okay, do it on me.
Uh,
And this poor woman,
oh.
everything that she said that she was feeling was dead wrong.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
black, white,
Yeah.
night, day.
Yeah.
And it was actually mortifying.
It's so, I know. And I think,
And I was like, why are you doing this parlor trick? You know what I mean? Like it was really bad.
It shouldn't be that way, and it shouldn't be positioned that way either. I mean, I that's what I feel. I'm not here to convince people necessarily. What I am here to do is say, hey, for me, this experience is very real, and it translates into good things happening, and it's coming from a place of love. But yeah, it's ridiculous what's happening out there now, and just how many people abuse that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people, especially on social network, who want to sell you a reading for something. That's got to be very disturbing to you.
Oh my gosh, so disturbing. In fact, I ended up having to buy the whole check mark system right on my Instagram and all of that, because I had so many people that were recreating my social accounts and then going after others. And I'm like, dude, I'm not even a paid medium. Like I don't even operate that way. But it's just ridiculous that that's what's happening, and preying on people who are vulnerable.
Well, this has been, as I said, I'm not a disbeliever. Again, it's just not, it's not something that I've had a craving or a need for me.
Yeah.
Your story is truly unique and remarkable.
Wow.
I think the work that you're doing is really invaluable. And if you can bring comfort to those who are suffering, and it sounds like you do that regularly, then good on you. And for those that are, snubbing their nose or what have you, you're never going to fix them anyways.
No. Thank you, Jonah. I appreciate that. That's really kind of you to say. And yeah, I mean, I'm meant to do the work I'm meant to do. And the people that are meant to, be touched by that work, it is what it is. That's really how I feel about it.
When we spoke offline, I said that, I had my eyes awoken to some of the evils going on in our society. There are a lot of bad things going on, especially in North America, that most people don't know about.
Yes.
If you're able to help the police and you're helping society deal with those, I don't really care how you're getting that information. I think it's fantastic. Your story is inspiring. I really thank you a lot for joining kind of on a whim. This has really been interesting. And that's what this podcast is supposed to be. I tell people I host podcasts. I like to talk to interesting people with interesting stories to tell. And I'm really thrilled that nobody appeared over my shoulder this whole time talking to you to distract you.
Well, they're like, no, he doesn't want to know anyway. So yeah.
No, thank you so much. I don't want to know. I just don't have a thirst going, oh my God, I'd love to hear.
No, I get it. No, and honestly, no one showed up. But I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on. And this was such a joy. It's really fun to talk to you and get to know you better too. So thank you.
Well, we will find a reason at some point in the future to have you on again. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Jonah. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you so much to Kiersten for today's episode of In the Press Row. I'm not sure we'll ever do one like that. I don't know what your take is on mediums. As I said, I don't disbelieve. I think they're great as a North Star, the same way a horoscope is. If I had a yearning and somebody provided me with information they had no real way of knowing, I would be an absolute believer. I don't disbelieve. I'm just not in that realm, so to speak. I think today's episode was really educational. She's doing incredible work. And her story about Shark Tank and Robert Herjavec really hit home. As always, if you would like to appear here on the Press Row, or if you'd like to advertise, or you have ideas, or you just want to get in touch, you can shoot me a comment on any of my social media accounts. You can email me at jonah@yyzsportsmedia.com. And please share this, follow, subscribe, and do whatever it is you do wherever you're listening or watching. As always, have a great day, and we will see you next time in the Press Row.